Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Colledge. Welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. Now, if I asked your team to describe itself, what would they say? Collaborative, creative, conforming, cautious? It's funny how all these words start with the letter C, which actually wasn't by design, but it's like a team personality test for another word that happens to start with C, culture. Now, these C words tell you more than any engagement score ever could. They reveal the nature of the culture that your leadership style, your leadership playbook has created, whether you designed it intentionally or, as usually happens, it simply evolved over time without anyone really paying very much attention. Now, let's be honest, leading right now can feel like steering through a storm. There are gusts of AI disruption, there are waves of regulation, shifting customer expectations, and generational winds blowing in all directions. And yes, generative AI did help me to write those storm-related phrases, which I quite like. But it does feel like steering through a storm, and volatility is only growing. And it's when the pace of change increases, which is exactly like the situation that we're leading in now, that the unspoken, undesigned, oh, it just happened playbook, that starts to show in every meeting, every decision, every project handoff. Now, we can't control the external storm, but we can control how we equip our team to respond to it. Nevertheless, research tells us that only 16% of leaders feel even somewhat prepared for this level of change, and only 13% even measure resilience. And that's a huge problem. Disruption's everywhere, and only 16% of leaders feel even a little bit ready to continue leading their teams to success in that situation. So here's what often happens. Some leaders, maybe people that you know, trying to keep going in the way that worked for them when the competitive environment was stable. And they keep doing what worked before because it did work really well before. They respond to the extra pressure by tightening processes and adding layers of approval and double checking everything. And it's really well intentioned. It's a way to try to stay safe. It's a way to try to keep their team delivering, as it always has. But instead of being curious, teams become cautious. Instead of being connected, they become contained, with each person focused on their patch, thinking about their survival and not helping each other, but working in a silo. Instead of being courageous, teams become compliant and they wait for direction before acting, not caring, but careful, guarding against making mistakes, and not creative, but constrained. They get locked into old routines that used to work, but they don't fit anymore. So all of that safety turns into stagnation, and what used to be reliable performance now gets experienced as rigidity. And gradually, those leaders lose connection to their people, to their mission, and to the sense of progress that makes work meaningful. And meanwhile, other leaders are experimenting, and they're providing some space for their teams to be curious and for their teams to demonstrate fresh thinking. Those are leaders of the teams that describe themselves with the positive C words like curious, connected, and courageous, maybe caring and creative. They haven't abandoned discipline, they've just redefined it. They've learned to match the structure that they provide for the team with the requirement these days to stretch, to adapt to all that volatility. And that's the only combination that works in a world that's just not standing still anymore. And let's think for a while about that old leadership playbook, the old culture. And most of us learned leadership from people who led really well in times of stability. But if we're still modeling our style on theirs and we're following a playbook that was brilliant then, but which is mismatched and increasingly irrelevant right now, and it's not anyone's fault, the ground's just shifted. But that earlier culture prized control and predictability and precision. And it tended to produce teams that looked a bit inward. They appeared calm, they appeared efficient on the surface, but they were spending enormous amounts of energy trying to stay that way. Now, over time, the language of those teams changes because the environment that we're working in changes. Now, the teams stop being curious and they start being cautious. They don't ask as many questions and they explore fewer new ideas. Team members stop being connected to each other and they become contained, with each function defending its own priorities and working in silos. Teams stop being courageous and they become compliant. They do what's required, but rarely what's possible or what's needed in these volatile times. They stop being caring and they become careful instead. They become polite and well-meaning, but hesitant to challenge each other and hesitant to challenge a direction of travel. And finally, they stop being creative and they become constrained by processes that used to work really well, but just don't work anymore. Now, that's what I call a defensive culture. It's busy, it's active, it's responsible, it's often very well intentioned, but it's inward looking and it's energy hungry. It's reactive to all of that volatility. It's just about surviving. Now, from the outside, as I said, these teams appear reliable and they look calm and they look efficient, but when you're inside them, they feel tired. It's hard work to be a part of them, and they burn energy just to maintain that version of success that the world doesn't really care about anymore. It doesn't fit with the volatility. Now, if that sounds familiar, you're not failing. I think you're feeling very responsible for your team. You're simply operating from an old leadership playbook that was designed for the stability and certainty that we used to have in an age which now rewards adaptability. And that's what I'll explore next, how teams can evolve from this defensive style to rebuild their curiosity and their connection, their courage, their care and creativity, all these lovely C words, by taking inspiration from neurodivergence. Great. So we've seen the state and you want to move, but when leaders begin to move beyond that defensive state, they usually fall into one of two traps. Both start from good intentions and both are partial fixes, but they're only partial fixes. So trap one is what I call the safe team. It's the easier one to fall into. It feels calm, people get along, the environment is polite and it's predictable and it's low risk and it's quite a nice environment to work in, but it's also pretty boring. The safe team is caring, but it's not always curious. It protects feelings more than it pursues ideas. Yes, it's connected, but it's not really courageous or bold. Conversations are smooth, they are supportive, everyone feels valued, but it's shallow. It's careful, it's not really creative, and there's little experimentation. So these teams deliver, but they don't discover, and they rarely surprise themselves. The second trap is the disconnected team. In a disconnected team, leaders have embraced difference and they've embraced creativity, but they haven't built the mechanism or the culture to convert it into value. So in a disconnected team, there's energy everywhere. There's new ideas all over the place, strong opinions, flashes of creativity, but it's frustrating and it's tiring and the ideas drain instead of energizing us, because the disconnected team is curious more than caring. There's more debate than dialogue. It's courageous, but it's not connected. So people do speak up, but they don't sync up to convert the ideas into action. It's creative, but it's not contained in a structure that can do anything with that creativity. So you see brilliant starts that burn out really fast. As I said, it's a frustrating team to work in. I heard an example just last week from a CMO who was defending a so-called difficult team member who always seemed to have a different view and a different way of doing things to everybody else. Their ideas was good, but the impact wasn't good because they weren't connected into the rest of the team. So likewise, the approach of the CMO to try to fix the situation wasn't working because they were just focusing on the individual who already knew that they were different and didn't want to be singled out anymore for special treatment, whereas a CMO should have been focusing on the team. So this person and the CMO had fuel for ideas, fuel to succeed in these volatile times, but they didn't have the container to convert it into movement, into impact. Now, both of these traps waste energy in different ways. The safe team builds connectivity, but without friction. So innovation fades away. And the disconnected team builds friction without connectivity. So delivery fails. But both of these are parts of where we want to get to as leaders in these volatile times. We want to get to the place where we combine these two traps so that together they become safety and connection with difference and drive. And then we have a team that says, hey, Will, you're volatile, but you know what? We know that we can create value, whatever you have waiting for us. And that's what a neuro-inspired culture achieves. And that's where we want to get to. And it's where we'll go next. So the solution isn't choosing one of these two options. The solution is to have both. And yes, you can have both. You can have it all. And that's what a neuro-inspired team is. And the culture in which a neuro-inspired team works is shaped by applying the lessons that we learn from including neurodivergent thinkers, autistic, ADHD, dyslexic thinkers. These are people who process and plan and create in different ways. In a neuro-inspired team, we take those lessons and we apply them to everyone. Now, because we all share different amounts of the same limited number of thinking styles, and yet this is biology, so we have normal distributions, and some of us happen to be at the extreme, and when we're at the extreme, we label people neurodivergent. But it means that when we design teams for the edges of human thinking, we automatically build team systems that work better for everyone because we all share those same limited number of thinking styles. Now, in a neuro-inspired team culture, those 5 traits that you've heard me mentioning throughout this episode don't compete with each other, they cooperate. Teams stay curious and caring. They ask questions that stretch thinking, but with respect and with empathy for the people behind the answers. They're connected and they're courageous. They're brave enough to challenge, and they're connected so that they can execute based on the ideas and respect each other's differences as strengths. They're creative without being careless. They experiment with discipline inside clear, shared guardrails. Now, these are the cultures that take that volatile world that we're all in and turn it into speed, turn it into impact, into novelty. They're not wasting energy patching up trust or managing misunderstandings because they don't really happen. There's no need for them to happen. These teams are able to channel the difference into direction, into progress. And because they intentionally balance structure with stretch, these teams don't just survive in uncertainty, they thrive in uncertainty. They love it and they work in a healthy way in it. Now that's the shift, avoiding the two traps from defensive to neuro-inspired. And notice that I'm not talking about a personality change. I'm not talking about rehiring anyone. This is an intentional team culture design choice. Now, if this feels like the kind of team that you want to build, curious and caring, connected and courageous, creative but without chaos, then maybe it's time to move beyond your old leadership playbook. Join me this Thursday, the 9th of October, for a free 30-minute live presentation, which is called Leading Under an Invisible Load, How to Turn Hidden Drains into Measurable Impact. Amongst other things, you'll learn the 3 golden rules of my FIT framework and start to see how small, deliberate design choices can shift your team culture from defensive to neuro-inspired. If you can't make it live, then register anyway and you'll get the recording. and you'll find a link to register in the episode notes. Now, if you're listening after the presentation and you're wondering where to start right now, try my free performance leaks audit. It's 45 minutes to start to uncover where your team's innovation energy is quietly seeping away so that you can start to redirect it into measurable impact. Remember, these are volatile times. There's no point trying to control the storm. You just need to learn to dance with it. Thanks for listening.